Of many unknown numbers, but hundreds of individuals during the transfer from Phnom Penh. So we're very pleased with that, and now we'll be moving on towards an appeal in that case, which undoubtedly will be quite complex and will take some time. But at the same time, we're preparing for the trial of the remaining charges in that case. We call this the case against Koumjian and Nguyen Chia, the two surviving senior members, was called Case 2. So 2-1 was the first trial, the judgment we just received, and 2-2 will be the next trial. And that will deal with all of the remaining charges. These include the persecution of religion of Buddhists throughout the country. It includes all of the security centers, including the tortures at Tulslang, the famous museum that some of you have been in Phnom Penh undoubtedly have visited, where about 16,000 individuals were taken there, tortured, and killed. It also will include forced marriages that occurred during the Khmer Rouge regime, where at times dozens, at times even hundreds of couples were forced to get married, often to people they had never met, and to the rapes that occurred when these individuals were forced to consummate their marriage. Also remaining are the genocide charges. In Cambodia, as you all know, the Genocide Convention does not include political groups, but includes racial, ethnic, national, or religious groups. There are two genocide charges pending: the genocide of the Vietnamese in Cambodia and the genocide of the Cham Muslims. So I think one of the things that is probably not well appreciated around the world, but I think is of great significance in modern times, is that we have now a case pending where the United Nations funded and supported court is engaged in prosecuting people for genocide against individuals because of their belief in Islam. And I think that's going to be a very significant case. While this is going on, we also have investigations continuing in two other cases. These are investigations, and many of you know the history. They were proposed by the international side of the court. The Cambodian court is a tribunal, a mixed tribunal, where there's both a national prosecutor and international prosecutor, national investigative judge and international investigative judge, and the judges of the trial chambers are mixed. There was a disagreement between the internationals and the nationals as to whether or not these individuals qualified under the statute as senior and most responsible for the crimes. But in the last year, these investigations have been continuing by the international side, but the investigations have not been impeded in the year that 10 months that I've been there. Well over about 300 interviews have taken place in the last year. And on one of the cases, case 4, the prosecution made an additional submission to the judges, asking them to expand the investigation a bit to cover in case 4 forced marriages that occurred in the particular areas that are the subject of that case, and rapes that occurred, both those from the forced consummation of the marriage and rapes that occurred outside of forced marriage. And this relates to what I believe it was Serge talked about, some recent cases at the ICTY, and the issue about when leaders give orders for things like the torture and execution of young women. Is it really a foreseeable result, or is it a surprise? Is it something they cannot be held responsible for if those women are also raped? It's been found in the initial investigation of case 2, the closing order said that it was not a policy of the leadership of the Khmer Rouge for sexual violence to occur. They were rather puritanical in their attitudes about sex. But clearly, in our view, when you take the young men, often teenage soldiers, give them complete control over women and girls, even to the point that they're allowed to torture and execute, and we believe that they can be held responsible, the senior leaders, for the rapes and sexual violence that occur. So there's much work that remains done to be done in the extraordinary chambers. We're operating like all of the courts under extreme budget duress, but we hope that the funding will continue and we'll be able to bring the court to a conclusion that will serve the interests of the victims in Cambodia, which are really the entire population. Anyone born before 1979 was affected. Anyone born after 1979, their parents, their grandparents were affected. It's affected them. So we think a court that's dealing with the killing of an estimated 1.7 million people deserves to continue and to reach a just verdict in those cases.